welcome. And I've just remembered, I remembered to do the recording first off. So welcome everyone to day 4 of our 5-day fast track challenge. How's everyone doing? Would you like to put a few words below in the chat just to share how you're going? And Sarah, how are you doing
I'm
with
good.
all that's been going on? It's got
I'm
awesome
good.
thing.
I'm staying,
Introducing
yep,
one.
picking up today. Went for a walk on the beach, which was really lovely.
Awesome.
Yeah, doing good.
That's really awesome. Very cool. So before I go into the topic for today, there was a really interesting question in the group, and Sarah shared it with me. And so I thought, right, okay, let's start with the question. I think it Carol, Sarah?
Yes, yeah,
Okay. Carol said,
yeah.
your thoughts on the theory that eating plant-based foods such as spinach, greens, veg, etc., with apple cider vinegar or vinegar-based dressing prior to eating protein carbs slows down glucose spike. Wow, that's very interesting. You know what that sparked for me is some of you have been in my world for a little bit, is you may or may not know, but I lived in France for a while and I lived with a family who basically fed us traditional French meals. It was in a village, and basically this is how we ate. We always had vegetables first, then protein, and then carbohydrates. And there is science behind it. And so basically, there's a measurable mechanism that is really actually underrated. And so it's what they call glucose kinetics. And so when you eat vegetables, especially leafy or bitter greens, dressed with some acidic medium, like vinegar, for example, or lemon juice even, things change. So basically, what the acetic acid does is it creates slow gastric emptying, a bit like we were talking about yesterday with GLP-1. And so foods of these nature leave your stomach slowly, which flattens the glucose curve by spreading the absorption out. So, and also acetic acid inhibits amylase, the enzyme that breaks starch into sugar. Less amylase activity, slow carbohydrate breakdown, less of a spike. So, and also fiber creates a sort of physical mesh in the gut that traps sugars and slows their transit into the bloodstream. And it also adds a sort of like a second meal effect where the acid and fiber in one meal actually modulates how your body handles the next meal too. So it's a really, really interesting question. And I'm so glad you asked it, Carol, because it's something that I must admit I haven't known a lot about, but I think our wonderful ancestors knew it knew it intuitively. And so consequently, if you're going to eat vegetables and things, it's a good idea. And actually, if I go back into my childhood, I always ate the vegetables first and then I ate the meat. And I think it was because I actually preferred the meat to the vegetables. So I used to eat the vegetables first and save the best till last. But basically, was I doing it intuitively? I don't know. I would like to say yes, but I've no idea really. But isn't it interesting? It's a really
Mm.
interesting thing how naturally cultures have done it.
So, would you say, in the absence of vegetables, that it's still better to eat the protein before carbs? Because I've always thought that did something to the insulin release.
Yes, definitely. I
Yeah.
would definitely. If you're going to have carbs, then definitely have those after you've had your protein. So it goes in a sequence of leafy green vegetables, especially bitters, and
Yeah.
and most cultures, sort of European cultures, definitely include a lot of bitters in their salads and stuff like that, like dandelion leaves and stuff like that. So, and the bitters also stimulate the liver to start activating
Right.
its cascade of what it does as well. So it's like, wow, we've been doing this for thousands of years, and now it's new science. Fascinating. Fascinating, this new science, isn't it? It really is. Okay, so today's story is all about stress and about how we can restore the balance. So here's my slides for the day, and hopefully you can see them today. We had a little bit of a glitch yesterday, didn't we? And I haven't managed to record yesterday's again yet, but so we're looking at restore. And so I don't magically mean we're going to undo the stress that you've encountered over your lifetime. I mean, creating opportunities for the body to recover. Now, we've reduced some of the load. We've looked at regulation. We've looked at replenishing. So now we need to ask, are we actually giving the body an opportunity to use those resources and recover? Because health isn't only about what we put into ourselves, it's also about the environment we're asking the body to function within. And I've talked about stress all the time because it's a vital component to our way of being, and your body is always listening to that. So we've actually been talking about this all week. Your body is constantly receiving information. And as I say, food is information, light's information, temperature, hormones are carrying information, and your nervous system is carrying information, and your brain is constantly integrating enormous amounts of it. At one level, your nervous system is continually helping answer what is happening. What do I need to do about it? Do I need to mobilize? Can I relax? Do I need more energy? Is something threatening me? Is the environment predictable and safe enough to settle? The important thing is that stress isn't something happening in your thoughts. It produces physiological responses throughout the body. So even if that stress isn't happening to you at that present moment in time, but if you're thinking about it, the body will respond. And if you're watching it on a movie, your body will respond. Not maybe as extremely as if it's really happening to you, but it'll still respond. We are amazing, but we haven't evolved to know that that isn't actually happening to us. And stress isn't the enemy. And that's something I really want to get across. We need a stress response. So imagine walking across the road and suddenly seeing a bus coming towards you. We don't want your nervous system saying, Karen said we must remain parasympathetic. I'll just breathe through this. You have to move. And the stress response helps mobilize the energy to move fast enough that we can move. So you've probably heard of people in a situation where maybe their child has been injured or being affected by something, and all of a sudden they gather huge amount of strength or speed. That's what the stress response helps us. It helps us to respond. And then ideally, once the immediate demand has passed, the system can then move backwards towards baseline. And the problem isn't that the body can activate. The problem is when activation becomes persistent and recovery is inadequate. In other words, it's called chronic stress. So I'd like you to meet your autonomic nervous system. A lot of what we're talking about tonight involves this nervous system. Autonomic means these processes largely happen without us consciously directing them. You don't sit there all day telling your heart to beat, thankfully. Two major branches you'll hear about are the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system helps mobilize us for action. The parasympathetic system supports functions associated with rest, digestion, and recovery. So that's basically fight or flight. So fight or flight isn't bad. Fight or flight gets talked about as though it's something terrible design flaw. It isn't. It's brilliant. During sympathetic activation, heart rate increases, blood flow is redistributed, energy availability changes, and attention can sharpen. That's exactly what we want when something requires action, like the bus, for example. But imagine driving your car everywhere with your foot permanently hard on the accelerator. Eventually, something is going to need attention. The body also needs periods where demand decreases. Activation followed by recovery. Think of it as a wave. It rises and then it falls. How many of you are very good at the rising part, but not particularly good at coming back down? I know I can say that was me. And I've taught myself to come down out of stress response. So let's go back to the hypothalamus. And I'm not going to give you another hypothalamus lecture tonight, but I wanted to show you this because it helps us join the dots. We first met the hypothalamus when we talked about appetite and energy regulation. And yesterday it appeared again when we talked about thirst, fluid balance, and ADH. Now here it is again in our stress conversation. The hypothalamus helps coordinate aspects of appetite, temperature, fluid balance, circadian rhythms, endocrine function, and stress responses. And this is exactly why I'm increasingly uncomfortable dividing health into separate little boxes. The same regulatory networks keep appearing in different conversations. The tiny but mighty hypothalamus is a big part of the HPA axis. It's a communication highway. I have talked about it briefly. It stands for H for the hypothalamus, P for pituitary, and A for adrenal. Very simply, when a stressor is perceived, the hypothalamus can release a signal called CRH. That signals the pituitary, which releases ACTH. These are just acronyms for various different hormones and different modulators. So ACTH travels through the bloodstream to the adrenal cortex and stimulates cortisol production. So basically, hypothalamus goes to the pituitary, which tells the adrenals to produce cortisol. It's a lot more complex than that, of course, but it includes lots of other feedback loops and things, but that's about it. So what I want you to see is that cortisol isn't randomly appearing. It's part of a coordinated communication system. We are amazing, aren't we? I just think that we're just phenomenal. And poor old cortisol has had a really bad rap, just as much as insulin and salt. Cortisol is essential. It helps mobilize energy. It contributes to maintaining blood pressure. It influences immune activity, and it has a normal daily rhythm. Cortisol usually begins rising towards the latter part of sleep, increases around waking, and generally declines across the day towards the night. That rhythm is part of our normal physiology. So once again, the goal isn't how do I get rid of cortisol? You really don't want to. The better questions involve timing, amount, context, and regulation. We're seeing this same thing, aren't we? Time after time. Insulin isn't bad. Cortisol isn't bad. Sympathetic activation isn't bad. Context matters. So, how and why can stress affect blood glucose? And here's something I really want people who monitor blood glucose to understand. Blood glucose doesn't only reflect what you've eaten. During stress, hormones, including adrenaline and cortisol, can help make more fuel available. The liver can release glucose into the bloodstream because the body is preparing to increase demand. From the body's perspective, that's intelligent. If I genuinely need to run away from something, I don't want my liver saying, sorry, Karen, you're fasting, kitchen's closed. It makes fuel available. The trouble is, our modern stressor may be an email, an argument, or a constant worry, lack of sleep. We're not necessarily going to be physically using the fuel in the same way. Some people have said to me, Karen, my blood glucose went up and I hadn't eaten. And they assume something must be wrong with the meter or there's something wrong with them. Not necessarily. Your liver stores glucose in the form of glycogen and can release glucose when required. Now, the liver can also make new glucose called, and the action is called gluconeogenesis, and that's from protein. So you absolutely can see blood glucose change without having just eaten a carbohydrate or some sugar. Remember what we've been talking about all week. The body regulates. It isn't simply waiting for food to dictate what happens next. And stress can change appetite too. But not everybody responds in exactly the same way. Some people become ravenous when they're stressed. Others can't face food. Some start craving highly palatable foods. And I'm sure you know what I mean by that. The sugars and the carbohydrates and those comfort foods. And chronic stress and poor sleep can interact with the appetite regulating systems we talked about in day 2. So this is what I'd be very interested if you could put it in the chat. Which are you? Are you a stress eater? Or are you can't eat when stressed eater? Or it depends entirely on the day and on the circumstances. I, for one, used to be a stress eater. When I got stressed, I used to go and eat, except for the times when I got highly stressed, when I couldn't. And so consequently, I'd love to know from you who's a stress eater and who's can't eat when I'm stressed eater. Yes, sorry, it depends on the day and what the stress is. And Jennifer, it depends, but I tend to stress eating. When exceptionally stressed, I can't eat. Yeah, that's me, Jennifer. That's me, definitely. So we're all unique little snowflakes, and I think it's a really important component to remember how unique we are. And this is where all our hormones and things is basically, um, you know, many people say to me when I say stress, people say, I'm not stressed. Nothing bad's happening. I'm not having a bad time. I'm actually very chilled. But physiological stress isn't limited to dramatic emotional events. It can be work stress, it can be relationships, it can be an ongoing worry, it can be pain, it can be illness, including underlying pathogens like bacteria, fungal infection, and even parasites. So you may not have huge symptoms, but your body is having to cope with that. And that is an ongoing stress, as is poor sleep, excessive exercise, significant undereating. This is a really important one. Don't undereat. And constant stimulation. These can all create demands the body has to respond to. They are not identical stresses, and they don't always produce identical responses, but they contribute to the total demands being placed on us. Which brings us right back to day 1. What is the load? Now, I think this is a really important thing, is our nervous systems do need contrast. Now, the goal is not to remove every stressor from your life. Good luck with that. We actually, as human beings, we need challenge. So exercise is a stressor. Fasting is a stressor. Learning something different, something new can be a stressor. Cold and hot can be stressors. Think cold plunges, saunas, that sort of thing. And appropriately dosed, challenges can contribute to adaptation. What matters most is our capacity to recover. Activity and recovery, challenge and rest, activation and settling. Resilience isn't the absence of stress. It's having the capacity to adapt and recover. So, as I've talked a lot, is sleep. Please don't think of sleep as 8 hours when nothing useful happens. Sleep is biologically active. Different stages of sleep support different processes. Sleep is important for memory and learning, immune regulation, metabolic health, hormonal regulation, and tissue recovery. Insufficient sleep can affect glucose regulation and appetite the following day. So you could be eating perfectly from the food list, but if you're only sleeping five hours every night and running on stress hormones and determination, I want to know about it because it makes a big, big difference. So sleep really does belong in the metabolic conversation. Your body has a clock, and guess who's back again? The hypothalamus. Inside the hypothalamus is a tiny region called, this is a mouthful by the way, supraclasmatic nucleus, or SCN, often described as the body's master circadian clock. It helps coordinate our 24-hour rhythms. Our circadian rhythms influence sleep and wakefulness, body temperature, hormone secretion, metabolism, and many, many other processes. So timing is biological information. So remember our phrase from day 2. Timing is information too. Light is information. And one of the strongest signals to the circadian system is light. Specialized cells in the retina detect environmental light and sending information to the brain's circadian clock. So your eyes aren't only telling your brain there's a tree, they're also helping tell your brain what time of day it is. Bright natural light during the daytime, particularly early in the day, helps anchor our circadian rhythms. Darkness in the evening is part of the opposite signal. This is why I love the simple things. Morning daylight costs nothing, no subscription, no supplement bottle, and no one has managed to put it behind a paywall. Now, as we're talking about light, I really want you to think how important light is, not just for seeing, but also for our metabolic pathways. If you're putting, as soon as you go outside and you're putting on sunglasses, you're actually affecting those metabolic pathways. So just remember that. Now, I'm not saying to go out into bright sunlight or if you're on the water or anything else, not to wear sunglasses, but go out into the sun without wearing sunglasses at some part of the day, especially morning and afternoon. It's a really, really important one. And it's really quite interesting how when people started wearing sunglasses, I feel it was part of the reasons why the obesity epidemic started, along with other things, of course, but basically that's part of it. And so it really does affect you. So your morning affects your night. And most people don't realize is supporting sleep doesn't begin at 10 p.m. It begins much earlier. Morning light, daytime activity, food timing and movement. Then as evening comes, reducing bright light and stimulation can help reinforce the transition towards night. We sleep within a rhythm. We simply don't press an off switch, although some days it does feel like I press an off switch and I just go out like a light, but hey. So what happens when we don't recover? This brings everything together we've been talking about. Persistent stress combined with inadequate recovery can influence sleep, appetite, glucose regulation, mood, energy, digestion, exercise recovery. And this is sometimes, I think, our health culture gets things backward. Someone is exhausted and struggling. So we tell them, try harder, exercise harder, fast longer, eat less, add another protocol, get up earlier. Sometimes the body doesn't need another demand. Sometimes it just needs recovery time. And by the way, rest is not the same as recovery. Sitting down isn't necessarily the same thing as physiologically settling. You can be lying on the sofa while mentally rewriting an argument from 2007. Your body may be still while your mind is doing 3 laps of some sort of circuit. So rather than me giving everyone the same relaxation prescription, I ask what helps my system settle? That's another piece of self-discovery. You might find helping your system settle might be going for a walk in nature, going for a swim. So you're actually physically moving, but it helps you relax. On the other hand, meditation might be your recovery, or doing yoga, or Tai Chi, or fill in the blank. What helps my system settle? And I'd love for you to have a wee think on that one. Also, a lot that's been talked about is breathing. And we always have it available to us while we're still on this planet. And breathing is interesting because it's automatic, but we also have to consciously influence it. Slow, comfortable breathing, particularly with a slightly longer exhalation, can influence autonomic activity and help people settle. You don't need to do the huge breathworks that are actually very fashionable at this present moment in time. You just need to slow it down. Gentle, comfortable. Actually, let's give it a go now. What I'd like you to do is I would like you to just relax into the chair and just take a nice deep breath through the nose. And we're not going to be holding breaths or anything. We're just taking a nice, slow breath in through your nose. And just let it sit there for a second, and then just breathe out nice and gently through your mouth. What this does is it basically helps the body feel it's safe. Because let's face it, if you take a nice deep breath, you won't be doing that if there is an enemy lurking. So let's do another deep breath now. Hold it for a wee second and then breathe out. And one more. Then everything just settles. Did anyone notice anything? I would love to hear. Okay. No one's commenting, so I'll just move on. So movement can help regulate too, like I talked about. And for some people, trying to meditate when they're stressed makes them want to climb the walls. Walking helps. Stretching helps. Gentle movement helps. Getting outside and sitting in the sun really can help. And strength work can be useful too, but if it's nice and gentle. Different bodies, as I say, need different ways of changing their state. And some people find the deep breathing rather anxious causing. So, we're all uniquely different. So, and nature changes the input. This is one of my favorites because sometimes we keep trying to fix ourselves when changing our environment is incredibly powerful. Just going outside in the natural light, maybe picking up on different sounds, the sounds of the birds or the sounds of the trees, and also giving yourself space. Maybe moving a little bit, just moving as you're walking or just standing and rocking yourself from side to side or backwards and forwards, depending. And the trees and the ocean and grass all can be really calming. Whatever you have available to you. You don't have to go to a retreat or go and make a special effort to go walking in the woods. Whatever you have available, use Mother Nature Allow the space. If you live in a town or city where there's not much greenery or anything, look up at the sky. Look how beautiful it is. And just acknowledge how beautiful it is to be living on this amazing planet. And so if we do that and we're changing the sensory information that comes into the nervous system, the question isn't what's wrong with me. Sometimes it's what am I surrounded by all day? Because if you're surrounding yourself with the beauty of life, you're less likely to be affected by the stress of life, of being inside, surrounded by electromagnetic fields, computers, and everything else. But also, we mustn't forget, is people. We, as humans, are beautiful souls, all of us. But if you don't get on with someone who you're working with, then it creates an angst, it creates a stress. And so consequently, we have to really be aware of our surroundings. And so now we don't have to be perfect. And I'm certainly not perfect. And don't turn this challenge into another source of stress. And I don't want you to panic because maybe you had your food outside of our 9 hours. And if you couldn't follow the food list perfectly, you're still here. If you've missed a live, there's a recording. If you slept badly, notice it and just learn what stimulated that. And for me, I've never wanted my programs or working with me. I didn't want to create people who can only be healthy when every condition is perfect. And as I've talked about before, I want us building resilience. Ultimately, greater flexibility, not greater fear. So, tonight's experiment is ridiculously simple. Choose one recovery signal. It's not a checklist. Run through them. So, morning daylight. Do you go and get enough sunlight? Do you go into the morning and sit outside, even if it's cold, and just be in daylight? Maybe a 10-minute walk. Slow breathing. Earlier bedtime. Quiet time without screens. Or, my personal favourite, do absolutely nothing for 10 minutes. And if nothing makes you feel guilty, that is particularly interesting information. So just notice what changes. Not what you think you should change, but what actually changes. Sitting for 10 minutes, for most of us, is a big challenge. Without a book, without a mobile phone, without a screen, without someone to talk to. Sitting for 10 minutes, giving yourself permission to do absolutely nothing. And I would love to hear how you get on with that, because it's addictive once you do it. And it really makes you much more present in the present moment. And being in the present moment makes life far more fun. And so, yeah, so I would like you to do one of those things. It doesn't have to be the 10 minutes. And so remember to gather your clues. We've gathered clues around food, hunger, energy, digestion. Now notice what your body feels like when it's activated versus settled. Your breathing, your shoulders, your jaw, your heart rate, hunger, digestion, thoughts, sleep. What does settled actually feel like in your body? Now, we're on day 4. Look at where we've travelled. We've looked at reducing what's creating unnecessarily load. We've looked at regulating. How is the body communicating and managing energy? Then we do replenish. Has the body got the resources it needs? Now we're looking at restore. Are we creating opportunities for recovery? And tomorrow we'll bring this all together about building resilience. And resilience is increasingly what I feel Fast Track to Health has actually been all along ever since I created it in 2016. And as we said right at the very beginning, health is the goal, resilience is the direction. And I really don't want you leaving this week believing that health means avoiding everything difficult. That's not resilience. Life happens. We get stressed. We eat things occasionally that don't suit us. We have bad nights. We travel. We get busy. We face challenges. And the goal isn't creating a perfectly controlled little bubble. It's building greater capacity to adapt, respond, and recover. And that's where we're heading. After tonight, I'd like you to share with us tomorrow what is one thing you realize your body might need more of. Not necessarily sleep, maybe space, movement, quiet, boundaries, daylight, fun, recovery. Now, tomorrow is our last day together, and we're going to bring all 4 days together and ask, how do I take what I've learned about my body and use it to build greater resilience? Because I don't want you leaving this challenge with another set of rules. I want you leaving knowing how to start listening to yourself. Because your innate wisdom is absolutely perfect for you. So that is me for now. Any questions?
Rex put his hand up. You're still muted, Rex.
That's it. He's got.
Good.
I was just celebrating your delivery, really, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, all
How are
great.
you doing, Rex?
Oh, I'm doing well. I do well on these challenges, but I look at it more like an adventure because I've been wired. A challenge for me equals pain, so I rewire the information to suit the way I navigate these I guess changes in my life, one of a better
Yeah.
word. Yeah, I enjoy it, and I've released I think another kilo because of the adjustments, just fine tuning.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Fantastic.
what's really prominent for me is I don't do the hard and fast rules, and you don't ask us to do that. But what I do is I might fast for 18 hours, and my eating window might be for 6 hours, and I still have 2 meals. I break my fast often with a couple of apples, and then I stack my last meal. So I eat a lot of fat, a lot of protein,
Oh,
and might chuck in some onions, and that works really well. I don't feel the need to eat until I feel the need to eat. It's not
yes.
automatic where, okay, smoko time, and I've got to fill my face with something that actually doesn't work anymore. So yeah,
Mm.
it's magic stuff. So I'm so grateful, so grateful.
So that means, doesn't it, that you've developed a metabolic flexibility because basically you haven't got that habitual way of eating. So you're actually eating when you're hungry,
Mm.
which is really how we should be.
Yeah, yeah,
It's fantastic.
absolutely. It's the lightest I've been since I was 20, so I'm grateful for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's
that's so
amazing.
good. Because that was your aim at the beginning, wasn't it? To get stronger and, you know, be
Well,
healthier.
I wanted to be in the best condition, physical condition, by the time I turned 65, and I'm 65 on Monday. And you've seen my photos. I have a physique of a 30-year-old, so high five that all day.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Triple high fives. Yeah, honestly, it's phenomenal. It's like Rex has totally turned around since I first met you. But especially we met 2018, was it? When I had a
Oh,
shop,
yeah,
something like that. And we first started off by getting your spine in balance, and then we went from there, didn't we? Went from to fast track, and then you rejoined this year. So it's
Yes.
great. It's very cool. So
Thank you.
it's exciting. It's very cool. Right. Anyone else got any questions that you might want to talk, or anything you want to talk about, really, about what we've been talking? Anything, Sarah, that's come to your mind when you've been listening?
The and I'm commented on it as well, the sunshine. A very dear friend of mine, Michelle, she actually studied circadian biology and taught me a few bits and bobs. And she said the first hour of sunshine after sunrise is the most significant, and that will actually prepare you for the other types of UV that are coming throughout the day. So, for instance, if you get that first hour, you won't burn in the afternoon sun, or less likely to. I'm not going to guarantee that, but it actually prepares your whole makeup and the whole sleeping pattern, of course, as well. But yeah, it it actually has a sequence. So if you think about how we used to do things, we'd get up first at sunrise and out, and then in the evenings we would sit with a fire, and not having fluorescent lights above us all day. Because the other thing is, even if you're having lights in the evening that are lower to the ground and more orange and dim, that helps your body realize it's nighttime and it's settling down for rest. Because if there's a great big light up here, it still thinks it's sunshine.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? And I have to say, we're currently sleeping in the living room because we're renovating the old bedroom and spare room. And we've decided to stay there because it's so nice because I have the fire going in the evening. And I have slept better. I think it was early July we moved in there. We'll just stay there. And I've slept better since then than I have in years. And
Well,
we
that also could be because the energy and everything of the ley
yeah,
lines, whatever you want to call it, is a better energy in that room for you sleeping with. Because there is some, uh, I wouldn't call it science, but there is some theory that you sleep better when certain people sleep better if you're facing certain directions.
yes, yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah.
And so it could be that, or it could just be the energy's better for sleep in the lounge rather than your bedroom. And so, it really is quite an interesting part of living, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's finding what's right for you. And it's, when you were talking about sun, that sparked a study I was listening to, and I think it was on YouTube or something. But basically, it was about how all of the skin cancers have really escalated since people have been using sunscreen
Yeah. And sunglasses.
and sunglasses.
Mm.
So they came about more or less the same
Pupils.
time, because I think we were living in Australia and they started doing the slip, slop, slap thing
Yeah.
in mid 80s, something like that. And I think that's when the escalation of melanoma of all types
Mm.
really started. And of course, we won't go into the chemicals and things that are in most of those sunscreens because they're totally carcinogenic. But what I've noticed from friends, not clients particularly, but friends who have had many, many so-called melanomas removed, and they keep coming back time and time and time again, they don't seem to be in places where they would have had sunshine a lot. So they don't get it on their arms or their hands, or the men get it on top of their heads, even though they wear hats all the time. And so my theory is that the carcinomas and things, they're actually the body trying to eliminate toxins, toxicity and stuff as well. So the skin's the biggest elimination organ. So consequently, the body's trying to eliminate. And I have had a couple of clients who have used castor oil and got rid of some of those. And they've also got the black ointment and bloodroot and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Mm.
Yeah, so I mean there are ways, but the thing is that we have to look at the root causes of everything.
Mm.
And from what you might have gathered, that for me, the root cause of most human ailments is a stress of some type. And And that stress leads to inflammation, and every single disease has a link to inflammation. So if we bring down the inflammation with the controllables, then we're going to get better health. So it's
Yeah.
controlling the controllables. We can't control really what goes into the air. We can't control what goes into a lot of our food because we can't see it, we can't taste it. But we can control what types of foods we put in, when we eat it. And also, I would also put this is the energy we put into it when we're making the food.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if any of you have been to a restaurant where you've heard the chef shouting or the manager and his staff having an argument, and then you notice the food. Whereas if you go to somewhere where everyone's really lovely, they're just happy, and lovely, and they're welcoming and everything else, how different the food tastes and how different you feel after you've had it. So it's like when I make remedies, for example, I never will ever, ever make a remedy when I'm in a bad mood, because that energy will transfer into what I'm making, and so it'll transfer to my clients. And so consequently, I don't work when I'm in a bad mood. I don't get in a bad mood very often, to be honest, but because I'm very fortunate, I love what I do, so I don't get in a bad mood. But basically, if we look at our emotional components of our health as well as our physiology, then we're well on the way to success for us, I feel. So
Mm.
now, any questions in here?
I also mentioned if you're in a city and you can't get into nature much, having house plants or plants on your desk at work can be really
Yeah,
helpful.
yeah. There are some plants that are hugely beneficial to helping clear electromagnetic fields and things. I think one of them's a spider plant,
Peace lilies.
peace lilies,
Yeah.
the money trees, and there's quite a few others. There's another one, I can't, is it a dragon something? It's got quite a long,
Yeah.
I can't
And
remember what they.
especially if they've got big leaves because that
Yeah.
captures more.
Mm.
Mm.
And there's various different plants that do various different things. It's a really interesting thing to look up
Mm.
because I find it absolutely fascinating. And yeah, so there's so many things we can do to control the controller. And so that's it, really. Okay, so if no one's got any more questions, I've talked enough for today. And so, Sarah, will
Mm.
you pop on? I'm going to say goodbye because I'm going to stop the recording right now because I don't want to get YouTube banning me. So, lots of love. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a magical, magical evening and a wonderful, wonderful day tomorrow. Lots of love. Au revoir.
Good. Oops.